Hey, it's Delphine here. So imagine this. My husband walked out on me, then came back demanding $9,000 a month like nothing ever happened. But what he didn't know? I had quietly built a $750,000 fortune while he thought I was just scraping by. Now, what happens next might shock you. Ever been betrayed by someone you thought you knew? Ever had someone expect you to give while you were giving everything just to survive? Tell me, have you ever felt like your own family is trying to take everything from you? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your stories. I stared at the papers Garrett had laid in front of me, the ones that officially ended our marriage. The divorce was final. The weight of it sank deeper into my bones every time I saw those words. Yet, it wasn't just the divorce that hit hardest. The real blow came moments later. Garrett's eyes, cold, calculating, watched me carefully, as if waiting for me to react to the demand he was about to place on me. $9,000 a month, he said, as if it was a simple request, just another conversation to have. That's what you owe me. My breath caught in my chest. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything, after abandoning me, after everything that had happened, he was asking for money. Not just any amount either, but $9,000 per month. I felt a surge of anger rush through me, sharp and bitter. How could he? How dare he? He had walked away, leaving me to pick up the pieces of our shattered life, and now he had the nerve to ask for money? I'm not paying you anything, I said, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. I'm not your bank. His lips twitched, but there was no smile there, just a grimace. He leaned forward, his eyes hardening. You're legally obligated to provide for me, he said, his words dripping with entitlement. No, I'm not, I replied firmly, pushing the papers aside. You're not entitled to a dime of my money, not after what you've done. The room seemed to close in on me, the silence thick and suffocating. He was waiting for me to break, to fold under the weight of his request. But I wouldn't. I couldn't. You can't be serious, he said, his voice rising slightly, though still cold. You owe me, Delphine. We had a deal. That deal is over, I snapped, and if you keep pushing me, I'll make sure you never see a cent of my money again. I watched him, his face contorting with disbelief, then frustration. For a moment, it was as if he couldn't process what I'd just said. I'll make you regret this, he muttered, standing up to leave. You'll see. You'll have to pay. I didn't flinch. Go ahead, I said quietly, my heart pounding in my chest. Try me. He slammed the door behind him as he left, but I didn't care. I wasn't afraid. This wasn't just about money, it was about control, and I was done letting him have it. The days that followed felt like a blur. Every moment I spent with Garrett's demand hanging over me, I was seething. But more than anger, something else stirred in me. A sense of power. A sense of reclaiming the life he had tried to steal from me. I wasn't just refusing him because I had to. I was refusing him because I could. Because for the first time in years, I had control. The weight of his departure had broken me once, but I wasn't going to let it do it again. I had to fight, and I had to do it alone. I wasn't going to be the victim anymore. I wasn't going to be the one who folded under pressure. I was going to fight for what was mine, and I knew it wouldn't be easy. Garrett would try everything in his power to wear me down, to manipulate me into giving him what he wanted, but I wouldn't back down. Not this time. I had made up my mind. I couldn't breathe when I saw the post. It was everywhere. On Facebook, Instagram, even in the gossip threads that Garrett must have sent out like wildfire. He and Celeste, their smiling faces framed by the soft glow of the sunset, holding hands with Ivy between them, the three of them looking like the perfect family. I could almost feel the heat of the betrayal radiating off of that picture, searing my chest. The caption was innocuous enough. Family is where the heart is, and we're all home now. But beneath those words there was an unmistakable message. The family they had built had no room for me. I wasn't even an afterthought. I was nothing. Just a name, maybe even a distant memory now. I stared at the screen, unable to look away. The urge to respond surged up in me. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, itching to type something, anything, to reclaim a little dignity. But what would it accomplish? Would it change anything? Would it make Garrett feel any guilt for parading this in front of me? Number it would just give him more control over the narrative, more ammunition to make me look petty and bitter. So, I did nothing. I shut the phone off, feeling the weight of his choice pressing down on me like a boulder. He had replaced me, and in doing so, he had broken me once more. But then something shifted in me. I wasn't going to let this break me. I wasn't going to cry over it. I had done enough of that already. I was done being his afterthought. The phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Ivy. I hadn't heard from her since the post. My heart beat faster. Was she going to side with Celeste now too? Would she abandon me the same way Garrett had? I opened the message cautiously. It read, "I'm sorry. I don't like this. It doesn't feel right. I'm staying with you." I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. My hand shook as I typed back. "Are you sure?" The reply came instantly. "Yes. I'm not okay with what they're doing. I'll be over soon." I stared at the words, a sense of hope and relief starting to settle in. Ivy, my daughter, the one thing I still had left, wasn't being taken from me. She was choosing me. For once, I didn't feel like I was completely alone. I couldn't help but feel a tiny spark of triumph. I hadn't lost everything. Maybe not all was as it seemed. Maybe, just maybe, there was still something worth fighting for. When Ivy walked through the door a few hours later, her face was flushed with something I hadn't expected. Defiance. The kind of defiance I hadn't seen in her before. She stood in front of me, looking more mature than I had ever seen her, her eyes steady and sure. "I'm not doing this," she said firmly. "I won't be a part of their new family. I don't care what Celeste says or how she manipulates me. I want to be with you." Tears stung my eyes, but I forced them back. This was a moment of victory. My daughter was choosing me. She was rejecting the false family they had built, and I was the one she wanted. "I'm so glad," I whispered, pulling her into a tight hug. "I need you." "I need you too," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm sorry I even considered it. I don't want to lose you." We stood there for a moment, her head on my shoulder, and I knew that no matter what Garrett and Celeste did next, we were going to be okay. We had each other. As Ivy pulled away, her face softened, and I could see the guilt and conflict still in her eyes. "Mom, I don't know if I can ever forgive him." "You don't have to," I replied, a small smile tugging at my lips. "You just need to be you. That's all I've ever wanted." I watched as she nodded, her shoulders less tense than they had been all day. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe again. The betrayal from Garrett, the picture that had so ruthlessly torn at my heart, no longer held the same weight. Ivy was with me, and together, we would get through whatever came next. I was going through the bills, the usual stack that had piled up over the past few months. I had grown used to it, the silence that accompanied my financial stress, the way I'd avoid looking at the amounts, pretending I was in control, pretending everything was fine. But then something caught my eye. A letter from the bank. I had seen similar ones before, but this one stood out. It had a thick red stamp across the top. Important. Immediate action required. I flipped it open without thinking. It was about a loan, one that I didn't remember signing off on. The letter mentioned my name alongside Garrett's, and they were listed as co-owners of our property. My mind raced. My eyes darted across the page as the words started to sink in. Garrett had taken out a loan using our home as collateral, without my consent. I felt the floor shift beneath me. I sat down hard, my hands trembling as I scanned the document again, willing it to make sense. But it didn't. It couldn't. There was no way. The loan had been approved under false pretenses. He'd forged my signature, posing as a co-owner of the property. It was a fraud, a deliberate betrayal. My vision blurred with a mix of shock and fury. How could he do this? How could he use me like this? I thought I knew him, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. I took a deep breath and wiped my eyes, trying to steady myself. I needed to think clearly. Garrett had crossed a line, and I couldn't let it go. I had to fight back. But how? The answer came to me slowly, like a spark catching fire. I needed proof. I needed everything, every document, every email, every receipt that could show how he had done this. I picked up my phone and started searching through old emails. There had to be something that would expose his lies. My fingers flew across the screen as I dug through the countless messages, the ones I had ignored or discarded over the years. Then I found it. An email thread between Garrett and the bank. He had signed my name, fraudulently, and now I had the evidence. I couldn't believe it. It was all there, laid out in black and white. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized that this wasn't just a financial mess. This was a crime. I leaned back in my chair, my mind spinning. The next steps were clear. I needed to consult a lawyer, start building a case. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about stopping Garrett from getting away with it. I had been silent for too long, letting him walk all over me. But not anymore. I contacted a lawyer that afternoon, explaining the situation in detail. They were quick to respond, eager to take on the case. It felt good to have someone on my side, someone who would help me navigate the legal mess Garrett had created. But it wasn't enough just to have legal support. I had to gather more. Over the next few days, I went through every scrap of paperwork I could find. Loan applications, credit reports, transaction records, anything that could tie Garrett to this fraudulent scheme. The deeper I dug, the more I found. It was like peeling back layers of deceit, each layer more damaging than the last. I spent sleepless nights going through the legal documents, my mind racing with the possibilities. The anger I had felt when I first discovered the fraud was now replaced with something sharper: determination. I wasn't going to let Garrett get away with this. He had manipulated me, used me, and now it was time for him to pay the price. But I couldn't shake the feeling of violation. Every paper I held, every document I uncovered, felt like a piece of him, his control over me, being taken away. It was both empowering and infuriating. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I focused on the next step. I couldn't let emotions cloud my judgment now. The next morning, I met with my lawyer again. They were as determined as I was. "We've got a strong case," they said. "We'll get this sorted, Delphine. He'll pay for what he's done." And just like that, a small glimmer of hope started to take root. This wasn't just about protecting my finances anymore. It was about regaining control of my life, of taking back the power that Garrett had stolen from me. As I left the lawyer's office, I felt a shift within me. The woman I had been, the one who had quietly accepted Garrett's manipulations, was gone. She had been replaced by someone stronger, someone ready to fight for what was hers. The battle was just beginning. I was making dinner when Ivy came into the kitchen, a hesitant look on her face. She sat at the table and watched me, her hands folded in her lap. I felt the weight of her gaze on me, but said nothing. The silence between us had been growing heavier lately, a barrier neither of us seemed willing to break. Then, as if to break the silence, Ivy spoke. "I need to talk to you about something," she said softly. I paused, chopping the vegetables, my knife slowing as I glanced at her. "What's wrong?" I didn't mean to say it," she started, her voice faltering. "But I called Celeste Mom today. I didn't mean to, but it slipped out." The words hung in the air, and my heart seemed to stop. I didn't flinch, but I could feel the anger rising within me, threatening to spill over. "Ivy?" I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why would you say that?" She looked down, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. "I don't know. I was upset." She was there, and it felt like it. The words stung. I felt betrayed, as if the bond I thought we shared had been fractured in that instant. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I turned back to the counter, unable to look at her anymore. I could feel the heat in my chest as I tried to hold back the tears. I thought I had been everything for her. How could she call Celeste Mom? Was that how little I meant? Ivy. I started again, my voice trembling. I've been there for you, I've loved you, and you call her that, after everything she's done? Ivy stood up, her face flushed with shame. I didn't mean to hurt you. I love you. You know that. But she's been there too. And I'm so confused, Mom. The word hit me like a slap to the face. She had never called me that in such a long time, and now it felt like I wasn't the one she turned to. Not for guidance, not for love, not for anything. I never wanted to replace her, Mom, Ivy said, her voice breaking. I didn't mean it. I wiped my hands on the towel, my own anger slowly subsiding, replaced by a deep sadness. But you don't understand, Ivy. She manipulated you. She hurt both of us. I know, she whispered. I know, but it's hard. She's always been there, in her way, and I... She hesitated, looking up at me. I've been feeling lost. I stood still for a moment, taking in what she said. It wasn't just a slip of the tongue. It was a symptom of something deeper, something I couldn't deny anymore. I was losing her in some way. The person I had raised, the girl I loved with all my heart, was torn between us. I had been her mother, her protector, and yet she still clung to Celeste. I walked over to Ivy and put my hand on her shoulder. You don't have to choose, Ivy, but you need to know this. I'll never stop loving you, and I'll never stop protecting you. Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded, her voice small. I know, Mom. I'm sorry. I don't want to hurt you. I pulled her into a tight hug, feeling the weight of everything we had been through. We'll get through this together, I promise. For a moment, everything felt like it was going to be okay. But deep down, I knew that this was only the beginning of the struggle. The rift between Ivy and me wasn't just about a word. It was about the love, the confusion, and the manipulation that had been tearing at the fabric of our relationship for so long. And then, as if to finally settle everything, Ivy took a deep breath. She pulled away slightly and looked me in the eyes, her expression stronger now, more certain. You're the only mom I've ever needed. I'm not going to let her control me anymore. Her words cut through the silence like a beam of light. For the first time in weeks, I felt a weight lift from my chest. There was still so much to heal, but at least for now, Ivy was choosing to be with me. I kissed the top of her head and whispered, "Thank you." I stared at the document in front of me, the words on the page blurring as my hands began to shake. It was a bank statement, one I hadn't meant to find. It was buried deep in the drawer, hidden under a pile of old receipts and papers I had been meaning to throw away. But now it was here, and my heart pounded as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. There, in black and white, was evidence of what I'd feared. Garrett had been working with Celeste to manipulate me, to steal from me, a loan, a massive sum of money, and he'd done it by fraudulently posing as a co-owner of our property. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just betrayal on an emotional level. It was financial, and it was criminal. I felt the air leave my lungs as I read through the documents again, slower this time, my mind struggling to keep up. Money laundering. The words felt alien in my head, but the more I read, the more my mind connected the dots. Garrett had gone behind my back, with Celeste's help, to secure this loan using our shared assets. How could I have been so blind? I slammed the drawer shut, my hands trembling. For a moment, I stood there, motionless, feeling the weight of the discovery. It was like everything I'd worked for, everything I'd sacrificed, was nothing more than a game to them. I had been nothing but a pawn in their scheme, manipulated by the very people I had loved. The anger came in waves, hot and suffocating. I was furious, but I was also ashamed. I'd trusted Garrett. I thought we could rebuild, but now I saw it all for what it was. This wasn't a simple breakup. This was a betrayal on a level I couldn't even begin to process. I wasn't just a victim in our marriage. I had been a victim in their game, a game I never knew I was playing. I grabbed my phone and called my lawyer. There was no time to waste. The evidence was right in front of me, and I needed to act fast. My fingers dialed the number, the phone feeling heavy in my hand as I waited for the line to connect. Delphine? My lawyer's voice came through the line, calm and professional as always. I need your help, I said, my voice shaking. I've found something big. It's about Garrett and Celeste. There was a long pause, and I could almost hear her shift in her seat, sensing the gravity of the situation. What did you find? They've been manipulating me financially, I said, my voice tight with emotion. Garrett took out a loan in both our names using the house as collateral. It's fraudulent. I have the proof. I could hear the rustling of papers on the other end as she took in the information. This is serious, Delphine. We need to get everything documented. We'll take this to court, and we'll expose them. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I'm ready. I've got all the evidence. I'm not going to let them get away with this. A sense of determination began to replace the anger, and I felt a flicker of control returning to me. I had spent so long feeling powerless, and now I had the ammunition I needed to fight back. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't at the mercy of Garrett or Celeste. I wasn't just the victim of their lies. I was going to take control. As I hung up the phone, I felt the weight of the discovery settle over me. I had the proof, but now I had to use it. I had to confront Celeste, confront Garrett, and make sure they paid for what they had done. That night, I stayed up late, sorting through every document, every file, making sure I had everything I needed. My lawyer was right. This wasn't just about getting my money back. This was about holding them accountable, about making sure they couldn't hurt me or anyone else again. With each piece of evidence I gathered, I felt more empowered. This wasn't just about exposing them for the fraud they were. It was about reclaiming my life, about putting an end to the manipulation that had cost me so much. As the hours ticked by, I couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. I was no longer the woman who had been left behind. I was the one in control now, and I wasn't going to stop until Garrett and Celeste paid for what they had done to me. I had spent days in a fog, emotions swirling, unsure of where my next step should take me. Ivy had always been the bridge between me and Garrett, between me and Celeste. For years, I had tried to hold on to her, to make sure she didn't slip away into their world, but the grip Celeste had on her was like a silent, suffocating weight. Yet, here I was, waiting for her to make her choice. It was late one evening, the light of the setting sun casting a soft glow through the kitchen window. Ivy walked in, her face a mixture of determination and uncertainty. The silence between us had stretched long enough, and I knew it was time. I need to talk to you, Ivy said, her voice softer than usual. She was nervous, I could tell. I pushed the papers in front of me aside, looking at her, giving her space to speak. I've been thinking a lot lately, she continued, pacing slightly, as though the words were fighting their way out. About everything, about you, and about Celeste. My heart skipped a beat. I couldn't look away from her, even as the dread gnawed at me. What are you saying, Ivy? She hesitated, her fingers gripping the edge of the counter. I've been caught between you and her for too long, she whispered. I can't keep pretending anymore. I knew what she meant. She was talking about the loyalty she'd always felt toward Celeste. I had seen it, the way Ivy would defend her, even when I could see the cracks in Celeste's mask, but I hadn't realized just how deeply Ivy was struggling with it. I don't want to be torn anymore, Ivy said, her voice cracking. I don't want to be in the middle. I've thought a lot about it, and I want to be with you. You're the only mother I've ever known. Celeste, she's not my mother. I see that now. The words hit me like a rush of air. It wasn't a surprise, but hearing her say it, seeing the pain in her eyes, made it all real. Ivy. I stood up, my voice thick with emotion. I don't want to push you into anything. This is your choice, but you need to know that I'm here for you. Always. She She nodded, her face softening. I know, but I'm done with all the manipulation. I'm done with pretending. I can't do it anymore. I felt a rush of relief flood through me, but also guilt. The guilt that I hadn't been able to protect her from the start, that I hadn't seen sooner how much she was struggling. I reached for her, pulling her into a tight hug. I'm so proud of you, I whispered. We stood there for a while, holding each other, the weight of the years of manipulation, the hurt and the healing slowly sinking in. I had my daughter back, really back. Later that night, after the tension had passed and the house felt quieter, Ivy sat across from me, her eyes filled with something raw. I need to tell you something else, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been lying to myself for so long. I thought I was helping Celeste, being loyal to her, but she's always had a hold on me. I was just so lost in her, and in her version of things. I'm so sorry for everything, for all the times I let her hurt you, for all the things I said. I could see the tears in her eyes, the regret that now colored her every word. The weight of her confession fell on me. It wasn't just the betrayal I'd felt, it was the years of manipulation that had taken a toll on her. Ivy, I said softly, you don't need to apologize for that. You were under her control. You didn't know. But I should have seen it, she replied, shaking her head. I should have known better. I was so blind. You were a child, Ivy. You didn't know what she was doing to you. I saw the way she swallowed her guilt, as though finally accepting the truth. And in that moment, I knew she was free, not just from Celeste, but from the chains Celeste had wrapped around her heart for years. I'll never leave you, Ivy said, her voice steady now, the determination in her eyes more solid than it had ever been. I promise. I'm with you, Mom. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the words sink in. The power of that promise was like a balm to a wound I didn't realize had been bleeding for so long. My little girl finally standing up for herself, finally standing beside me. She had chosen me, and in that choice, something deep inside me shifted. The world outside seemed quieter, less threatening. For the first time in so long, I felt like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. Garrett's downfall came as suddenly as it had been a long time coming. It was like watching a house of cards collapse. The entire structure of his life, built on lies and manipulation, finally crumbled under the weight of its own deceit. It started with his job. He was exposed, his illegal activities at work uncovered, and his reputation, once untouchable, disintegrated overnight. I watched, both stunned and oddly satisfied, as the man who had controlled so much of my life for years lost everything. I had been preparing for this moment. I knew it was only a matter of time before the truth about Garrett's financial schemes, his manipulation of the company, and his dishonest dealings caught up with him. But nothing could have prepared me for the finality of it, the way he was no longer the figure of power, the one who made all the rules, the one who controlled my every move. Now he was nothing. It felt like justice, but there was also a hollow sadness in it. My ex-husband was being undone, and a part of me was relieved to see him pay for the things he had done. Yet another part of me couldn't help but mourn the man I once thought I knew. When the news came out, it didn't take long for his colleagues to turn their backs on him. The phone calls stopped coming. He was no longer invited to meetings. He was stripped of his position, his title. Even his friends distanced themselves. The walls he had built to keep his empire standing now closed in on him. That night, I saw him. Garrett showed up at the house, a shadow of the man I once knew. He looked disheveled, his face marked by stress and disbelief. He had always been the one who made the rules, the one who dictated everything. To see him so small, so defeated, was almost surreal. You think this is funny? Garrett's voice was low, bitter. You think I deserve this? I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching him. For a moment I felt the anger well up inside me, but then something else took over. The years of resentment, the manipulation, the control, all of it seemed to pour out of me in one steady wave. "You brought this on yourself," I said, my voice steady, though my hands clenched at my sides. "All of it, and now you have to live with the consequences." He stared at me, eyes burning with a mix of fury and desperation. "You don't get it, Delphine. You never did. You never understood how much I had to do to keep us afloat." I shook my head, disbelief creeping into my voice. "It was never about keeping us afloat, Garrett. It was always about control. You wanted to control me. You wanted to control everything." There was a long silence. Then he spoke again, his voice soft and broken. "I lost everything." "And you deserve to," I replied. "For all the years you used me, used Ivy, for everything." He didn't respond. He stood there looking lost, the man who once held so much power now a mere shadow of himself. It was a bittersweet victory. Yes, he had lost it all, but the damage he had done, the emotional scars he had left behind, couldn't be undone by his fall. As I watched him turn away, I felt a strange emptiness settle in my chest. It was over. He was gone. But that didn't mean I was whole. It didn't mean the hurt would just disappear. A few days later, the news came that Garrett had been forced to leave the city. It was the final blow to his once imposing presence. His forced exile was symbolic. He had been cast out of everything, reduced to nothing. I felt a strange sense of closure, but it was tempered by the knowledge that it had come at a great cost. Ivy, of course, knew about Garrett's fall from grace. She had watched him unravel from the sidelines, her eyes filled with a mixture of pity and disbelief. But her loyalty had been torn long ago, and now she had made her choice. The weight of that choice was both a relief and a burden. I sat alone that evening, reflecting on everything that had happened. The silence of the house felt heavy, but there was also a sense of freedom in it. Garrett was gone, finally out of the picture, but the emotional toll he had taken on me would linger for some time. "I don't think I'll ever feel sorry for him," I whispered into the quiet room. But part of me knew that this wasn't just about him. This was about me, about reclaiming my life, my peace, my future. I had taken the first step, and now, with Garrett gone, it was time to move forward. It didn't take long for Celeste's world to unravel. One day, she was the picture of poise, controlling every aspect of her life with a smile, and the next, she was drowning in scandal. Her fraudulent dealings came to light in the most public way imaginable, her name dragged through the mud in every news outlet and on every social media platform. It was a moment I had secretly been waiting for, but when it came, the satisfaction wasn't as sweet as I thought it would be. I watched as she tried to salvage some dignity in front of the cameras, her voice trembling as she addressed the media. The more she spoke, the more she dug herself into a deeper hole. The public was unforgiving. They saw the same woman I had seen for years, the manipulator, the liar, the woman who had twisted everything to her advantage. But it wasn't just the public that turned on her. Her friends, the ones she had once considered allies, dropped her without a second thought. No one wanted to be associated with the fraud she had become. At first, I couldn't believe it was really happening. For years, Celeste had been the puppet master, pulling the strings, making sure everything fell in her favor. And now, to see her exposed, her carefully constructed life crumbling, it felt surreal. But as I stood there watching the news coverage, something inside me started to shift. There was a part of me that wanted to feel triumphant, to celebrate her downfall, but another part of me just felt empty. Yes, she deserved this. But the hurt she caused me, the damage she did to my family, couldn't be undone by her public shaming. The years of manipulation, the lies, and the deceit, they had left scars that no amount of justice could heal. Ivy watched me as I stared at the screen. I could see the concern in her eyes, but she didn't say anything. She knew how I felt about Celeste. She had witnessed it all, from the manipulation to the betrayals. But I had also come to realize something in those long, painful years. I couldn't let her dictate my life anymore. As the news continued to air, I let out a deep breath. Celeste had fallen, but it wasn't a victory for me. It was closure, a long time coming, but still not a victory. The final blow came a few weeks later. Celeste's empire, once built on lies, crumbled completely. She lost everything, her wealth, her status, and even the support of the few people who had been foolish enough to stand by her. Her house was seized, her offices abandoned. She had nothing left. I found out through a friend that she had been escorted out of her home like a criminal, her possessions thrown into the streets. There was a part of me that wanted to savor the image of her downfall, but when I saw her on the street, face pale, eyes wide with disbelief, I couldn't. This was the woman who had once been a part of my life, who had manipulated me and controlled me. She had stolen so much from me, from my family, but now, there she was, completely shattered. I didn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. But I couldn't deny the weight of what her fall meant for me. She had done everything in her power to break me, to take what was mine. And yet, here I was, still standing. But it wasn't a sweet victory. Not when you've been through the things I had. I found myself reflecting on all the years she had spent ruining me, thinking of how I had once admired her strength, her ability to manipulate situations to her advantage. Now, I could only see the hollow shell she had become. And that realization struck me hard. The closure I had been searching for was finally here. But there was no joy in it. There was no relief. It felt like a long exhale after a painful fight, but also a hollow victory that left me empty. When I looked back at my journey, my fight to get here, it felt like a battle I had won, but not without scars. Scars that Celeste had given me. And now, with her gone, I was left to pick up the pieces of a life she had once torn apart. The media coverage had stopped. The public had moved on to the next scandal. But I was left, standing on the edge of a new chapter, carrying the weight of everything that had come before. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt the possibility of something different, something better. For me, for Ivy. The past had been a heavy weight, but maybe now it was finally time to leave it behind. The silence in the room felt heavy as I sat across from Garrett, who was staring at me, disbelief etched across his face. It was time. Time to show him just how much had changed. Time to finally take back control of everything he thought he could take from me. "I've been quiet long enough," I said, my voice steady but carrying a weight of authority I hadn't known I had. I leaned back, watching his eyes narrow. He was still the man who thought he could control every aspect of my life, but I wasn't that woman anymore. "I have something to tell you, Garrett." He looked at me, his eyes searching mine, waiting for me to break, but there would be no breaking today. "I have $750,000, I said simply, watching his jaw tighten. The words hung in the air like a bombshell, and for a brief moment, Garrett was speechless. The man who had always held the reins in our marriage, who had treated me like I was incapable, now had nothing to say. I let the silence stretch, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. His world was crumbling, and it wasn't from anything I'd done. He had done it to himself. "Where did that come from?" he finally sputtered. His voice was thick with disbelief, unable to comprehend how I could have managed to keep something like that hidden. I didn't flinch. I simply shrugged, a slight smile playing at the corners of my mouth. "My creative projects, my investments, I've been working on securing my future, and now I'm in control, not you." His eyes flickered with anger, but beneath that, there was something else. Fear. It was the first time I had seen him so vulnerable, and it was nothing short of poetic justice. "I'm not the woman you left behind, Garrett," I continued, my voice calm but firm. "I'm stronger than you ever gave me credit for. And now you have to face the consequences of your actions. You won't get a dime from me." His face reddened as he clenched his fists, but there was nothing he could do now. The power had shifted, the tables had turned, and this time I was the one in control. As Garrett tried to gather his pride and put up a defense, I couldn't help but feel a quiet satisfaction. I had won. The fear I'd carried for so long, the uncertainty, the manipulation, everything that had haunted me for years, was gone. Garrett's attempts to salvage his image, his pride, and his future were futile. The damage was done, and his reputation, built on lies and deceit, was now shattered. But even as I watched him struggle, I realized something. Yes, he had lost everything, but the emotional toll of all those years of manipulation couldn't be erased. Not by his fall, not by the loss of his status. That pain still lived with me. Still, it was a victory. It was the victory of reclaiming everything I had lost to him, and I would never let him take it from me again. The aftermath of it all was strange. Watching Garrett pack up his things, knowing he was leaving with nothing, was a moment of bitter sweetness. He was being escorted out of the city, his world no longer the one it had been. The collapse was complete, and he had nothing left. I sat back and watched it all unfold from a distance. He was gone now, banished from the life I had once shared with him. And yet, there was no joy in his exile, only a quiet, lingering sadness that I would never forget the pain he had caused me. As I stood alone in the silence of my home, I reflected on everything I had gone through, everything I had survived. I had come through the fire, scarred but stronger. I had reclaimed my independence, my dignity, and my peace. The feeling of closure was heavy, but it wasn't the end of the story. It was simply a new beginning. I had rebuilt my life, piece by piece, and I would continue to build it, no longer haunted by the man who had tried to tear it all down. For the first time in years, I felt free. As I reflect on my journey, I realize that the most powerful thing we can do in life is take back control. Control of our choices, our emotions, and our future. I didn't get here by waiting for someone to give me permission. It took strength, but also the courage to recognize my worth, to see past the manipulations, and to rebuild my life from the ground up. This story isn't just mine. It's a reminder for all of us, especially in times of struggle, that we hold the power to change our circumstances. You're never too far gone to turn things around, and you deserve a life that you can be proud of. So let me ask you, how have you taken control of your own life? Have you ever felt stuck in a situation where you didn't think you could escape, but then found the strength to break free? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. If this video resonated with you, please leave a comment and let me know where you're watching from. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories like this one. Together, we can continue sharing our journeys and lifting each other up. You're not alone in this. Let's keep growing together.